It seems once again, we have found ourselves deep in the woods exploring the shadows of the trees. These subscribers send in some truly creepy tales from the woods around their towns. If you have a story that you would like to hear on this channel, be sure to send it in to the email that you can find in the description down below. Let's get into these truly terrifying tales that will keep you up for nights to come. I really like your channel, and I figured I would share a story of my own. I've lived my whole life in the mountains of northeast Pennsylvania. And here, the only large predators you need to worry about are coyotes, black bears, and the occasional bobcat, and they tend to leave you alone. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I've gone on countless camping trips deep in the woods around here. I have more than a few vivid memories of mostly good times. My friends and I also had a lot of close calls and ended up with a mixed bag of you had to be there to believe it and the don't tell mom type of stories. This story can fit into their category. One of our scout leaders owned a hunting cabin deep in the woods, and each year we made a point to visit at least once. These trips were always a blast, literally. The cabin is where I first learned how to handle firearms, and is ultimately how I fell in love with shooting. When me and my 3 other friends got to our Eagle Scout awards, we got permission to stay at the cabin on our own as a sort of last hurrah before we went off to college. We went around mid-February, just after deer season. As secluded as it really was, we really had the woods to ourselves. It was unusually warm the week before, and the dirt road to the cabin was pure muck from snowmelt. We had to stop twice to push one of our 2 vehicles out of the mud. We finally reached the cabin, and it was a wintry mix and almost dark, so we quickly unloaded our gear, started a fire, and got dry. That night, we sat by the fire drinking beers, playing board games, and recounting past trips to the cabin. The next afternoon, we went out shooting. This particular day was frigid, with wind that could cut right through you. We didn't care though. We had lots of ammunition, and when our hands got too cold to load a mag, we would just warm them on the barrels of our rifles. It started snowing, and was beginning to get dark, so we headed back inside to make dinner. By the time we were done eating and cleaning up, the snow flurries had become a full blizzard, which is more like a rough lean-to, and watch the blizzard. We were out there for about 15 minutes, drinking more beer and getting rowdy, when we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the woods about 20 meters away. We fell silent, looking at each other, then the forest, then back. A few minutes passed and my friends tried to assure us that it was just a fox looking for a mate. While a fox's mating call is truly bone-chilling, and it is the right time of year, this explanation wasn't good enough for me. The sound was too guttural to be a fox, and had almost a gurgly quality to it. Plus, why would a fox be lurking for a mate in the middle of a blizzard? And why would it be comfortable announcing its presence so close to a group of drunk and loud humans? We stood there for a moment longer scanning the woods, but in the darkness and the thick snowfall, we couldn't see anything. I was just starting to recover my nerves when we heard it again, much softer, but much closer. It sounded like it was right around the corner of the cabin, about 12 feet away from us. We booked it back into the cabin, locking and latching both the front door and back doors. We sat at the dining tables, our rifles at arm's reach, not saying a whole lot, and not hearing anything else outside. An hour and a half passed, and the storm died down. One of my friends, Mike, and I both had to take a piss, so we walked outside to the latrine. While I was waiting for him to go, nature's call became too great, and so I walked around the corner of the latrine to relieve myself. As we started back, we saw a tall, bushy figure standing right up next to the cabin. At first, we thought it was a dead tree we hadn't seen until now, but then we saw its breathing. Its back was to us, but against the light coming from the windows, the cloud of fog was unmistakable. It had its face pressed up against the window, looking in, and we could see the window fog as it breathed. It was so tall, and it had to hunch down just to see through the window, and was using its long fingers to focus the light around its eyes. Mike shouted, "Holy crap!" drew his pistol, and popped off around in this thing's direction. I swung the rifle off my shoulder and took aim. But before I could get a round off, this thing turned to us with its cutting eyes, screamed, and bolted into the woods. We got back to the cabin, finding the door locked, and started pounding and yelling at our friends to let us in. They opened the door, each with a gun in hand, white as the snow on the ground. They said that this thing has been walking all around the cabin, looking in the windows and scratching on the walls. We didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Instead, we sat on the dining table. We had our backs to each of us with a gun ready. The next morning, we sloppily threw our gear in the car and hightailed it out of there. With all the snow sitting on top of the puddles of ice, getting out there was even more of a pain than getting in. But we were determined to get back to civilization ASAP. A couple of months later, I saw the scout leader who owned the cabin, and I mentioned a little bit of what we saw. He of course did not believe me, saying, "I've owned that cabin for 30 years and never seen anything like that." I still have tons of great memories at that cabin in those woods, and if I'm ever presented with an opportunity to go back, I'll take it in a heartbeat. Still though, I get a sinking feeling in my stomach every time I remember that night. This story takes place about 12 years ago in North Carolina. My neighbor, Jim, and I were catfishing at a lake near our development. It was a beautiful night with a full moon, and we had been having pretty good luck. After a while, we decided to call it a night, so we brought the boat in and cleaned our gear. As we were loading up the truck, we heard the distinct rhythm of an oar striking the water in the distance, getting closer. We hadn't seen any other cars, and hadn't heard any other boats launch, which is weird because it's a relatively small lake, and on a still night like this, sounds travel well. Eventually, we saw a bright red canoe emerge from behind some trees paddled by another one of our neighbors, Dan. Dan was an old local whose family was one of the first to settle in our area, way back in the day. He was quite a bit older than us, and was always a little crabby, but we still knew him somewhat well, and I never really had an unpleasant interaction with him. Seeing him out in his canoe, this late, I guess could be a common occurrence. But maybe not quite this late. As he drifted by us, I waved and called out, "Hey, old-timer." He looked at me, smiled, and waved back. I still remember his expression in the moonlight. He was smiling, but his face was very somber, almost like he wanted to say something, but couldn't think of the words. I turned away to load the last of my stuff into my truck. When I looked back, Dan and his right bright canoe, which we'd seen clear as day, were gone. We didn't think much of it, figuring he probably rounded the corner and got behind some more brush. A couple of days later, I was at Jim's house smoking some fish we caught. We were knocking back beers and shooting the shit. At one point, one of us casually brought up how weird it was to see Dan at the lake so late at night. Jim's wife went pale. She went inside and came out with the obituary section. Dan had passed away from a stroke the day before our fishing trip and hadn't been found until the morning after. I'm a very superstitious person, and I think he was trying to tell us something that night. Maybe he wanted us to swing by his place to find him. Maybe he just wanted to have one more moment in his own little paradise. Either way, seeing him that night was an experience that has always stuck with me. Some background. At the time, I lived in the country in central Texas, outside of Red Rock. My closest neighbor was a ranch about a half-mile to the west. For months, I had been seeing something near the woods on my property. I couldn't tell really what it was. Sometimes, I would see a large toothy smile in the dark at the tree line. Now, the story. It was the middle of a rainy day in September of 2009. I was off to work and relaxing on the couch, watching TV. I keep hearing scraping on the metal roof. There aren't any trees very close to the house, but I just shrug it off. Then, there were loud thunks on the roof, but again, I just shrug it off because I live alone and really don't feel like getting scared. Suddenly, part of the siding just comes off of the house, under the window next to the TV. I had removed part of the sheetrock to fix the outlet, so that part of the house is now fully exposed to the rain. Through the hole in the wall, I thought I caught a glimpse of a tail. I grab my handgun and go outside to put the siding back on. When I reach the piece, I see claw marks on the piece of the siding on the house. 3 claws. I suddenly get very uncomfortable. I feel like I am being watched. As you would expect, a wet wire starts to spark. I run towards the back door and I can hear something running behind me. As I reach the back stairs, I get pulled off the steps. I screamed and unlocked my gun. Whatever it was let go. When I stood up, I looked around to see what was running through the forest. It was running upright. A pale, stormy gray like the sky. It was about 4 foot tall with long arms with 3 claws at the end of each arm. It had a long tail that whipped behind it like an agitated cat. When it was in the trees, it turned around and gave me a toothy smile. I was so scared I felt sick. That thing had set a trap. It wanted me outside. I am a Wiccan and have put protection on my house to keep out the evil. I am guessing that is why it needed me to come outside. During this whole situation, one of my neighbors had been driving by and saw what happened. He left the roadway and drove his truck through my yard to get to me. I was a 21-year-old woman alone in the country. He pulled up only moments after the thing had attacked me and was already in the trees. He was white as a ghost. "Are you okay?" he asked, jumping out of his truck. "Yeah, I think so," I said, feeling a little dizzy. "What in the fuck was that?" he asked, pointing in the direction that thing had ran. I don't know, but it ripped the siding off," I said, pointing to the still sparking wire. I went inside and turned the power off. When I came out, the man had put the piece back on. "You're bleeding," he yelled and pointed to my arm. I looked at my upper arm and calf on my right that each had 3 claw marks. They're not too deep, but now that I see them, they started to hurt. I thanked him and assured him I was okay. He left and I went back in my house. 2 days later, even with the cleaning and covering the cuts, they weren't healing. They seemed to almost be getting worse. When my friend came over a few days later, the cuts were pretty bad. She asked what happened and I told her. She went pale and was shaking. I wasn't very fazed by it. I said a few personal protection charms and went on with my life. She told me she could fix my cuts, so I let her try. She pulled a small bottle of holy water from her purse. She's Catholic. And she prayed while she poured the holy water on each cut. It didn't really hurt anymore. 3 days later, they were mostly healed. She believes it was a demon that someone had summoned to attack me. I don't know what it was, but it has been 9 years now, and I have never seen it again, and I still have the scars. My name is Stefan. I am 44 years of age and currently work as an ethnobotanical bioprospector, living in the remains of the ghost town of Wide Awake along the Continental Divide of Colorado. I spend most of my time in the mountain forest looking for, collecting, and analyzing plant species for novel medical uses. When not out and about, I have a small but bright and comfortable off-the-grid cabin at 10,100 feet, where I live and study the different samples taken on each trip out. These surveys for samples take me all over the Gilpin and Boulder County area on foot, so I encounter many unusual and different things. With over 37,000 mines in these two counties, I often find odd vehicles, machinery, structures, and sometimes even graves. I report these graves to the Forest Service so that they can be recorded. Sometimes they are reburied in the Denver area, but are often left in place with the Forest Service marker indicating that they should not be disturbed. I have had quite a few run-ins with moose, bear, and elk, but have been mostly successful in avoiding them, and they usually return the favor. Just in case they do not, I carry an Arisaka 99 rifle. These are light, short, and easy to use in heavy brush without hanging up on anything. I am not a gun nut like a lot of the locals, but deep woods do require some protection. Better to have and not need, and all that, as they'd say. On October 6, 2011, I began a 2-week survey to find and mark colonies of rattlesnake plantain orchids. It may come as a surprise to some, but the mountains around me contain over 40 species of high-altitude orchids. Rattlesnake plantain orchid is unique in the fact that it never freezes. The leaves stay green and flexible under the snow regardless of the temperature. I received a request to survey and mark any colonies found for winter collection so they can be analyzed in lab conditions. This mostly would be entailing finding a colony, planting an 8-foot fiberglass pole with a flag, and recording a GPS tag site. The first 3 days went by quite uneventfully. I found a colony, plant a flag, mark GPS, etc., etc. We would walk a survey arc of about 10 miles and end up back at my truck for the night. I have a hardcover cover-up truck in my bed and a bed set up inside for sleeping. On the 4th morning, I awoke and drove to the next survey arc. I parked and geared up as usual. Sky was clear and I could smell the pines and spruces and the light wind around me. The forest was really quiet, but this is normal. Most of the birds have headed lower. Squirrels seldom venture out this time of year. All the insects have died or have gone dormant, and large game have moved on. Nothing but the wind and the occasional distant jetliner could be heard. 4th mile in, and 6th colony site is where I felt some things go bad. Having spent most of my 20s in combat environments, my situational awareness and intuition are quite heightened. As I was getting ready to plant the colony marker, my skin crawled and I felt my stomach drop. I felt like someone or something was sighting in on me. It's been a bit since I had felt this way, so I had to take a moment to calm my breathing and deal with the adrenaline surge, but quickly got that in line. Clenching my gear tight in case I needed to move fast, I hit the quick release buckle and unslung my Arisaka 99. Keeping the barrel at a 45-degree angle up, I put the back against a Douglas fir and surveyed around the area in a tight arc. Looking left to right, then left to right, I froze. At the edge of a rock scarp, sticking out about 15 feet above the ground, I saw a large shape about the size of a large bear. Twisting the rear safety to off, I slightly level on the shape. It is not desirable to kill an animal when I am the one in its territory, but at 60-some feet, I was not taking the chances. With a sudden surge of motion, the bear stood up. When I say it stood up, it looked like it was getting taller, like its legs had been folded up multiple times and were stretching out to the height of its full 1/3 taller than any bear I have ever seen. The arm seemed to do some unfolding thing, until I was looking at a long, limbed, lanky standing shape, a few feet shorter than the scarp of the rock it was next to. I had no problem pulling the trigger, and this was not a person. This was not an animal I knew to be in these woods. 4 rounds left my rifle in about 8 seconds, and 60 feet, I did not miss. The large bear shape dropped to all fours and hissed like a broken propane regulator. As weird as it sounds, this threw me off more than any roar or bellow I expected. The inside of the mouth was dark, not pink, and I'm sure I saw 3 canines per side on the top jaw. The bottom jaw, I don't seem to recall. I think I remember seeing a streak of white fur alongside each side of the jaw, but the rest was pretty dark toned. It seemed confused by what just happened more than injured. Taking advantage of the moment, I stepped behind the Douglas fir and pulled my sidearm from my left shoulder holster, pressed my hand against the tree to steady it, and cycled at a clip. I dropped it, slammed another in and unloaded it as well. I dropped a second clip and loaded a third. The creature turned quicker than I thought was possible and moved away quite fast. It sounds weird, but it looked like its skin was loose in a lot of places and flapping, kind of like someone running with a lot of black trash bags flapping around it. It was out of my sight in seconds, and that was that. It was 4 miles in, but I had traveled in an arc, so the road was less than a mile in a straight line downhill. Moving as quick as I could, I cleared about 100 yards and took a quick breather. I cut loose my survey poles, water, and everything else to shed weight. I have no idea how long it took to get back to the road, but I had no problems on the way. I dropped all of my gear on the side of the road, except for my rifle and sidearm. Sprinting down the road, I made it to my truck rather quickly. I was at 10,900 foot altitude, so I was breathing like a locomotive, and my heart was hammering in my ears so loud, I was hard-pressed to hear anything. I started my truck and calmed my heart and lungs. I drove to the mine, and all the way till I got my pack. I stopped there and waited for a minute or two. I inched the truck right to the next drop pack and quickly reached for it, grabbed it and threw it in the passenger seat, slammed the door while looking in at the same time. It took about 20 minutes to reach a paved county road, and I finally felt safe. I haven't been back to that area since. I filed a report that area was not accessible. I feel uncomfortable filing a report like that, but I have no desire to spend any more time in that area of the county. I now do my surveys and collecting with others, and they are quite well armed. No point in taking chances anymore. It is fun to teach people all the plants and how to use them while doing my work. Guess it is kind of a happy ending, but I still get a bit fearful from time to time in the woods. Keep your eyes open, ears clear, and head on a swivel. I was about 19 at the time, living in the small town of Dwelling up in Western Australia. I was living there with my younger brother, who was about 15 or 16 at this point. We had only moved there about 2 years prior, so we were kind of outsiders in the town, and I hadn't made many friends there at all, other than my neighbor. This was primarily due to me being a stoner and an ex-drug addict, and preferring my alone time and smoking my weed. However, my younger brother was friends with a few people, and one of those people he was mates with is where half of the story is based on. I should note that I used to hang around in the Jarrah forest quite deep in, and always off the walking trails, where it was well away from the wandering hiker. I used to grow some dope plants in the forest, so it had to be well away from the public, and it used to send shivers up my spine sometimes with the intense feelings of fear that would come over me some days whilst out walking through the thick, eerie brush. I would usually go with my knife and some smokes and a joint, so I could smoke and keep my nerves occupied with nicotine and the while walking. However, on one occasion, I heard no insects, no birds, no wind, no nothing. It was dead. I was walking back from watering my few tiny little pathetic weed plants when I was starting to get the feeling I was being watched and followed, and an intense fear came over me. So I started walking extremely fast, and I basically was trudging and smashing my way through every plant, scrub, or branch in my way when I could start to hear the swishing sounds of multiple movements behind the trees around me, like something was leaping and hiding from tree to tree. I was shitting myself as I was fast walking and pushing my way through the looking side to side and trying to catch glimpses of whatever was going through these shadows in between the trees. It went like this for a few kilometers until I made my way out of the thick forest and hit a gravel road which leads onto the main road into the town. That's the end of the encounter. As much of a pussy as I sound, I like to think I was literally scared and I was freaking out the whole time. However, I forgot about this experience pretty quickly and never put much thought into it until a few months later, when me and my little brother and the neighbor kid, who is a brother of my friend, were sitting around in the backyard chilling out, smoking and talking shit, when the conversation went to the subject of the creepiness of the town and the ghost stories of how the land was apparently haunted due to the earlier settlers poisoning the entire tribe of the native Aboriginal people with poison flower and killing all of them. If you ask the Aboriginals, all they speak of the town being cursed and bad luck filled with angry spirits of the people that were there before. Anyway, the neighbor kid was talking of an encounter he had had with one of these shadow figures. He said he was walking down a walking trail and had veered off into an old train tracks where he was walking to a local sesh spot of local teens. It was at this point when he said that he was strolling along when he so happened to look up and see a black shadow figure directly in front of him. He said he was spooked and petrified when he stood there looking at this thing of pure black. He said it stood over 6 feet tall and that it started coming towards him, when he started running away for his life screaming. I wouldn't have taken this word, but I know what I saw that day too, and it was just too eerily similar. I have many other stories of weird encounters in dwelling. One time, I found a black garbage bag in the bush behind one of the neighbor's house whilst I was looking for mushrooms, and when I opened it, I was confronted with a foul odor and a swarm of blowflies, and some rotting meat with a leg bone in there. I'm not sure what animal it could have been, or maybe even if it was human. The weird thing was, there was about 2, maybe 3 other bags in the area. Each bag was roughly 15 to 20 meters apart. I decided to walk home and not mess with the rest of them. About a year or two ago, some friends and I were enjoying an eerie late-night drive around town. As the night drug on, we found ourselves tired of the usual routes. See, my buddies and I frequently go out driving late and try to get freaked out on the weekends. This time, however, we went out of town a ways into some unfamiliar territory, surrounded by woods. It's around 1 a.m., and we have been pretty much lost, only having a vague sense of the direction home is in. We find some pretty creepy spots, and began to get a little jumpy. We start to talk about some legends and stories and get some more and more edge coming in, and loving every second of it. As the night drags on, we end up driving around a bunch of farmland. There's farmland on either side of us, broken up by significant chunks of woods ever so often. There's a railroad track to our left in front of one of the farms. It's late, so no lights are on and we assume everyone's asleep. There are no streetlights in this part of the county either. Anyways, in the distance, in the outline, there's a big object. As we approach it, we discover it's an old cattle truck, large as could be with huge cargo area for transporting livestock. We see and ask Rachel what in the hell this thing is doing here at this point. No one is around, and our headlights are high enough to where they would shine into the cab, and it looked empty. Just as we get off to this thing, it roars to life and the lights flash on. We continue to drive by, thinking, what the hell is going on? And that sure was weird. We all perked up a little bit. As we drive on, I notice in the rearview mirror this thing is following us, even though it is facing the other direction when we drove by. I tell my buddies, and we all think whatever, weird, but whatever. Until we noticed how quick it was approaching us. We were going around 45, and the thing caught up to us like we were riding bikes. My buddy Ian's driving, and speeds up to 55, 65, 75. We literally hit 75, and this thing is still outpacing us and covering more ground than we can. It's about 20 yards away, when Ian whips into some other back road and the thing goes flying by. After a minute, it loops around and we get back on the same road as before. We stop and look both ways and it looks clear, no truck. As soon as we turn right to the road and we get back on and we start leading us town to town, Ian sees a pair of lights in the distance over the hill thundering towards us. He shouted, "Crap!" and I looked back. Once again, we get up around 75 miles per hour on this little back road, and the damn truck is still coming. It's getting closer and closer, and appears to be accelerating. At this point, our instincts kick in. I tell the guys we better haul our butts out of here and speed up more. We see the main road coming up that led us back to this truck, and it's right back on our butts. Ian tells James in the back to assemble the Ruger we had in the back and load it, but we all knew it would do jack against a cattle truck that seemed to be unmanned. As we get to the road, there's only one car in sight, and it quickly darts past, not noticing. Luckily, because we were going so fast, and we were so scared of the truck barreling towards us, that it was literally 10 feet away at this point, that we not only illegally changed lanes, but also ran the light and sped home. I stared out the passenger window and my mouth dropped when I saw the thing plow through our last position and sling right in the opposite direction we were headed in. I still didn't see a driver. We watched in the rearview mirror, and its twilights disappeared slowly. We were relieved. Looking back, it never got off the road we were on until it almost killed us and made that hard right. I don't know how that thing didn't fall over. It should have toppled. Hell, I think we drifted in the Explorer we were in. Anyway, it was a spooky night, and I haven't encountered it again. But I don't think we've been back on the same street. We've tried to find it but aren't entirely sure where we were. I guess it could have been just some crazy dude jacked up on something driving like a maniac. But we never want to see that driver again, because somehow that truck defies the laws of physics. Since me and the guys talk about it all the time and laugh now, I thought I would share it. We still drive late at night in remote areas, and I've seen other things worth noting, but nothing like that damn truck. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like, as it helps me a ton. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, as I upload videos almost every single day, similar to this one, and you don't want to miss out on those. If you have a story that you'd like to share on the channel, be sure to send it to the email that you can find in the description down below. These stories were definitely really creepy, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. I would also love to know if you got to the very end, so comment down below letting me know that you made it from beginning to end. I would love to see that. Also, if you aren't aware, I recently just released some brand new Swamp Dweller t-shirt designs. If you would like to support the channel and help me out monetarily, be sure to check out these shirts. They're pretty freaking cool, and I think you'll definitely want to be repping these for your school year coming up. Anyways, I'll see you guys soon for another creepy video.